Okay, so let's just really quickly talk about sound mixing now. And if you have questions, as I said, check out the video that reviews basic sound mixing. Um, it's slow, it's tedious. You need to go track by track. You need to solo out each track and go through, listen to it, make your adjustments with your keyframes and this bar until you're hitting those guidelines that I've given you, or you've probably gotten in other classes. And just to review those really quickly, these are the audio meter guidelines. Never exceed 0. In fact, never even exceed -3, just to give yourself headroom to make sure you never hit 0. Keep your dialogue between -6 and -12, so in this range. Loud talkers up here, whisper talkers down here, averaging in around 9. Keep sound effects below that, so -12 to -18. Again, loud stuff here, quiet stuff here. And then background music, keep down here at -18. Okay? This is a slow, tedious process. You're going to solo out the track and you're going to mix them all individually. Then you're going to go back and you're going to listen to them all together, because sometimes the combined audio, multiple tracks together, will push you above your -3, and you're going to have to go in and bring maybe one of them down, or maybe a combination of them down. But that's how it goes. That's how good mixing works. And give yourself time to do it. Now, are there some tricks to mixing? There are. One thing that can be helpful, and this is either in the bin, you can do this over here, or you can do it over in the timeline. And what this is you can click on a clip, right click, and go to audio gain. Now let's say you went through all the footage and you recognized all of this all of the audio is low. Like, I'm gonna have to bring it all up at least like 10 dB before I even can mix anything, or vice versa. All of this is just too high. I need to bring it down like 6 dB before I can even mix it. Something you can do, and you can select multiple clips and do this, or you can do it one clip at a time. So if you go to audio gain, adjust gain by, you can type in a number here and hit OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to raise the audio for this clip. Or if I was doing it in a timeline, right click, audio gain, 10. It's going to raise the audio for that clip 10 dB across the board. But the handy thing is it doesn't alter my slider. So I increase the gain, so I increase the audio, right? It's louder, but I still have the full range of this to make it even louder or softer. So that's the advantage. It's like raising the volume without you losing the ability to do your keyframing and mixing that you normally do here. Again, this can be helpful, especially if you know all these clips need to come up or all these clips need to go down. Now, let's say you're in a pickle and the audio that you got, let's say somebody interviewed, President Obama, and it was a spur of the moment thing, and they got him, they interviewed him, but the audio was terrible. It was super low, but we need to use it because we're never going to interview Obama again. So we've got to make this work. So we go in here and we raise it up to the max, whatever we can do here. And still it's not enough. So then we raise it up here and still it's not enough. Well, first we know this is garbage audio. That is going to be terrible. But so you have one more trick, and it's over here under effects, and it's volume. This is just a straight up effect you can drop on an audio clip. It then gives you an additional audio slider. So you've maxed this one out. Now you're going to max this one out. Now, again, you hope to never be in this situation because the audio is going to be terrible because you're adding so much gain to it. But I just want you to know that there are options beyond just this slider and the audio gain. Okay, another handy shortcut that you might want to think about experimenting with is another thing you can do here in the timeline through right-clicking. So if you right-click on a clip and you again go to audio gain, you have these normalize options, okay? And if you click normalize max peak 2 and you type in here, -6, which is what we said was the maximum peak we would want any of our dialogue to hit, and then you say okay, what Adobe is going to do is look at all these waveforms and bring them all up or down, depending on the situation, until your highest audio peak is at -6. Sometimes this is a really useful tool to get a bunch of dialogue all to a relative same place. Because again, you can do this to multiple clips at once. So I could say audio gain. I know it's all a little bit low. So I'm going to say -6. Whoop. It's going to bring it all up. Now, all of these things I'm doing don't mean you don't need to still go through, solo this out and look at the audio meter and make your refinements. But what they can do is sort of be a first pass to get things closer to where they need to be. Again, if you have really well recorded audio, these things aren't necessary because it's probably coming in pretty close to where you need it to be. It's more when you're getting a bunch of material that's all a little low or all a little high, or one particular actor was always high and you can just do one of these techniques to get them in a base level before you go in and do the refinements. Okay, so you've done your sound editing. You've done your sound mixing. It's all sounding great, seamless, the levels are balanced, you're digging it. But let's say you still have some things you're not quite happy with. For example, maybe something's a little noisy, like we talked about in the office scene. Noise reduction. How can we maybe attempt to do some noise reduction? Now, Premiere, which is, in this class we're going to be sort of trying to max out what we can do in Premiere. So in Premiere, you have some options. If you go over here to noise reduction, we have a denoise effect here, right? And you can drag and drop, double click, and in the effects control, go to edit, and you'll have a window. And in here, we have light noise reduction, very heavy noise. And what I suggest is you start with the light and you listen to it.
Of course you haven't. I haven't told you yet.
Now, this particular scene was really well recorded, so we don't have a ton of noise, but if you may need this on some future projects, or if you want to practice it, pull out the dialogues, the office scene. There certainly was some noise there that you could try to eliminate. As with all the effects, don't be too heavy-handed. You're not going to be able to pull off miracles here. If it's noisy and bad audio, there's a limit to what you're able to, take out. But Adobe Premiere has some really nice tools that you can play with here, where you can ramp this up or down. You can adjust the curve, basically the frequencies, how they're being affected here. And it can do a pretty good job for some light noise reduction. Now, another situation that came up in the office scene was we introduced footsteps, or we introduced some other Foley sound effects, but they just sounded a little bit too clear and loud, like they were recorded right up on the microphone, which they were. How can we, what Walter Murch describes as worldize some of these sounds? And in the book, he talks about how one way to worldize, the old-fashioned way to worldize, is you take the sound, you go into a real environment like an office, you place a microphone across the room, and then you play a recording of the sound in the real world space, it bounces around, gets recorded on the microphone, and it sounds like it actually happened in that environment. You can do that. That's awesome. But we also have a lot of cool digital tools, basically reverb and EQ, that will allow you to do the same things digitally. So first, let's just talk about EQ. EQ is equalizers. You've maybe messed around with it a little bit before. So we've got lots of EQ equalizer options here. You'll find what you like better. These bands are really useful. I'm going to drag those over. So here's the 10-band graphic equalizer. I hit edit. And so what the graphic equalizer is doing, okay, sound is made up of frequencies. Low frequencies, mid-range frequencies, and high frequencies. And the sounds in your film are going to fall all over these spectrums. And you, through EQs, can narrow down and adjust how much we hear from certain frequencies. So if I raise this slider up, what I'm doing is I'm increasing the volume only of very high frequencies. So, scratches and tweets and high-pitched things will be louder than, the voice or bassy low notes here. And then I could do the opposite down here, right? And that's the basics of EQ. And you can play around with this to mimic how, for example, those footsteps would sound if they weren't recorded right up next to the microphone. If they were across the room, we can, and often what this usually is dropping out some of the high end or low end, or sometimes a combination. Now there are some presets in here that you can play around with as well. Okay, so let's take a look at another equalizer. It's this one up here, under Filter and EQ, Parametric Equalizer. It's doing exactly the same thing as that graphic equalizer we looked at earlier. It's just a different interface. These are the frequencies from low to high. And instead of the sliders, I have these basically keyframes that I can pull down or up, and you can add in ones and make all these adjustments. It also has some presets that you can play around with. And let's just take a listen here at some of the different presets. So let's do Old Time Radio.
Of course you haven't. I haven't told you yet. So Daniel, our director, he wants us to stay late and rehearse that one scene.
Okay, and that's a classic, right? You need someone talking through the radio or the phone or on the TV, and you can see what is going on in here. They're taking down this low frequency, but they're particularly taking out the high end, and they're bumping up the mid-range here, okay? And you could customize this to get the sound you like. In the Premiere Gal tutorial that I put up there, she gives an example of how she likes to do this. So as I've talked about before with Adobe, there's multiple ways to do anything. And with filmmaking, the proof is in the pudding. It doesn't matter so much how you did it as the end result. If we're getting the sound, if you get your footsteps now sound worldized because you adjusted the EQ to take off some of that heavy bass, then problem solved, right? Now, it often isn't a single solution. So sometimes you do a little EQ, but maybe you also need to do some reverb. Now, what is reverb? Reverb is echo, okay? In the tutorial that you're going to see about that ring out reverb thing, which is really cool, I think she likes to use the surround reverb. Go for it. I tend to often use studio reverb. Whatever gets the job done is okay by me. So let's click on here. So now we've got our EQ making her sound old time radio. But let's say that just still sounds too present. It doesn't sound like it's in a room. It sounds like it's just a perfect recording. So we can then add some reverb. And reverb is basically echo. And we have some presets here. So if we want it to sound like we're outside the club, room ambience, vocal reverb. Let's just do a little room ambience.
Of course you haven't. I haven't told you yet.
There. That actually sounds quite good there because the studio sounds like that, right?
Of course you haven't. I haven't told you yet.
I can play with this with these sliders, and I encourage you, if you find an effect that you really are into, there are tutorials out online going in depth into all of these sliders. Personally, for reverb, I tend to start with a preset and then adjust the wet and dry just subtly until I get the effect I'm looking for. And as I said, she's going to talk about surround reverb. I do the same trick she does with the ring out with studio reverb. As long as you're getting the results you like, either one is fine. But these are ways that you can better integrate sound effects from a library or Foleyed into the real world of your scene. Also, you can do special effects like somebody talking through the radio and things like that. Okay, now what about Audition? What about Adobe Audition? When should we use Adobe Audition? Well, first of all, if you are comfortable with Adobe Audition, and for example, you took Professor Reifert's audio production course, and you're like, hey, I would rather do this in Audition, then you should totally do it in Audition. I mean, once you have your sound editing completed, go ahead and do your mixing, your reverb, your EQ. Do that in Audition if you prefer. And of course, you can do that by Edit Clip in Adobe Audition, right? But at this point in your editing career, Adobe Premiere probably is going to be able to handle most everything you do. For example, I'm an editor. I'm not a sound designer. And the level of project I work on always is going to be going to a sound designer and a mixer after me. I work on projects that have enough budget where it wasn't always the case. I used to have to do all of it myself, but now once I have picture edit and sound edit, I send it off to an audio mixer who works in either Audition or more frequently Pro Tools to do all of the mixing and refining and compression and sweetening that goes on in the sound design world. So in this editing course, we're not going to get into that. We're going to assume the projects you're working on, if they can't afford a sound designer, they are not expecting you to be able to do top-level sound design work. So the tools within Adobe Premiere will be fine for you. If you already know Audition, sweet, go and use it. If you don't, max out on Adobe Premiere and you will be fine. If you want to become a sound designer in the long run and dive into Adobe Audition, by all means go for it. But don't feel like there's something you're failing to do by not moving this into Audition at this point. Okay, so let's say in the long run, you get a sound designer, right? You've got somebody who's going to mix your sound and going to do some sound design as well. How do you get it to them? Well, it depends on every sound designer and every mixer. Are they working in Audition? Are they working in Pro Tools? If they're working in Audition, then probably you just need to give them your Premiere file and all the audio media, as well as an export of the picture lock. And then they will be able to open it up. They will have, picture lock right here, so an export of just the video. And then they will get all your tracks and all your media for the audio. And there are different ways to do this. You can do this manually. There are also tools that you can get into under Project Manager, right? Under Project Manager, that at this point we're not going to get into, but Project Manager is a tool within Premiere that allows you to export, like create a standalone file and certain kinds of media depending on who it's going to. Let's say you're working with someone who's using Pro Tools, then they probably don't want your Adobe Premiere file. What they may want is what's called an OMF file and your media, because the mixer is going to want not just your audio media for this clip. They want to see what's before and after here, because they may need to use it to do some of the effects that they're going to do. So they need what's called the heads and tails of your clips. And so that's why when you send it to an audio mixer, they're going to want more than just your export. They're going to want your audio media. They're going to want some kind of project file to allow them to recreate your timeline in their audio editing software. It's hard to go more specific than that right now because it depends on your mixer and what they're using, but just be aware that if you get into the scenario, Adobe can handle that using Project Manager, and you just need to ask them some questions on what specifically they need, and you'll be able to sort that out. Okay, so that's it for our audio lesson. I covered a ton of stuff. I hope you can follow it. Email if you have questions or concerns. Of course, come to my office hours too. And if you're feeling concerned, go and check out those review tutorials, and definitely check out the Premiere Gal tutorial, particularly the ring out thing at her number 2 trick that she teaches. Okay, good luck on the editing, and I will see you again next week.